The room went silent the moment the hologram activated. Hundreds of cadets, warriors, pilots, engineers, from more than 20 alien species stood frozen as glowing red letters burned into the air. Vortes 7. Classification: Extreme Death World. Mission status: Solo retrieval. Survival probability: near zero. Veterans in the room stopped breathing. Instructors avoided eye contact. Some cadets instinctively stepped backward. Vortes 7 wasn't just dangerous. It was infamous. 12 missions had been sent there. Not a single one had returned. The planet was known for acidic rivers, toxic air spores, predators that hunted in coordinated packs, and storms strong enough to tear armored vehicles apart. Most species didn't even call it a planet anymore. They called it a grave with gravity. Ryan Cole pushed through the crowd. He was human, average height, average build, bottom of his class in tactical theory. He looked at the mission details calmly, scrolling through the data with narrowed eyes. Solo mission: abandoned research station. Recover classified data cores. No scheduled extraction. Ryan raised his hand. I'll take it. The silence became heavier. A Taurian cadet with 4 arms slowly turned toward him. You understand what Vortes 7 is? Ryan nodded. 12 missions. 0 survivors. That planet kills everything. Another voice said. Ryan shrugged. I grew up on a frontier colony. Survival training started when we were kids. Honestly, this just sounds like camping with extra problems. Nobody laughed. They stared at him like he had just volunteered to walk into a black hole. An hour later, Ryan sat across from Commander Hayes. The human commander looked exhausted, older than his years. He pulled up images of Vortes 7 on his desk display. Purple forests littered with bones, rivers steaming with corrosive chemicals, storm clouds flashing green lightning. This isn't bravery, Hayes said quietly. It's a death sentence with paperwork attached. Ryan leaned forward, studying the images. What kind of predators are we talking about? He asked. Hayes blinked. That's your question? Predators are territorial, Ryan replied. Scavengers are unpredictable. That matters. The commander sighed and swiped to the environmental data. The water dissolves a carrion kitten in under a minute. Ryan nodded. Yeah, but that's calcium-based. Acid eats that fast. Human skin handles acidity better than most species realize. Hayes stared. You're serious. Ryan smiled slightly. Commander, I may be terrible at quantum math, but survival? That's my thing. And if command already expects me to die, what do I actually have to lose? The room was quiet for a long moment. Finally, Hayes approved the mission. 2 days later, Ryan stood in the equipment bay. He ignored the standard hostile environment kit. Instead, he packed fishing line, hooks, a collapsible rod, water purification tablets rated for Earth's worst swamps, waterproof fire starters, a solar charger, and at the very bottom, his father's old camping knife. The quartermaster clicked in irritation. That equipment is not regulation. Ryan zipped his pack. Regulation assumes I'm fighting the planet. I plan to live on it. Other cadets came to say goodbye. Some looked sad. Most looked relieved it wasn't them. A Vraxian clasped Ryan's shoulder. May your ancestors welcome you swiftly. Appreciate the optimism, Ryan replied. As he boarded the automated transport pod, Commander Hayes handed him a small data chip, personal emergency beacon. If you use it, I'll deny giving it to you. Ryan pocketed it. Thanks, sir, but I'll be fine. The pod launched. As alarms screamed during atmospheric entry, radiation warnings, toxin alerts, predator signatures, Ryan calmly turned the sound off. Through the viewport, the purple forest of Vortes 7 filled the sky. All right, he muttered. Let's go camping. The pod hit the atmosphere like it had punched a wall. Warning lights flooded the cramped interior, painting Ryan's face red and orange as the onboard AI calmly announced his impending death in 17 different categories. Atmospheric toxicity, levels unsafe. Radiation spikes detected. Gravitational fluctuations unstable. Unknown life forms detected within a 5-kilometer radius. Ryan exhaled slowly and reached up, disabling the audio alerts. Silence felt better than panic. Through the small viewport, Vorty 7 unfolded beneath him, a world drenched in alien color. Endless forests stretched the horizon, their canopies glowing shades of deep violet and dark blue. Rivers carved bright, jagged scars through the land, steaming faintly as they twisted between the trees. From orbit, it almost looked beautiful. Almost. The pod's thrusters screamed as they fired, struggling against unpredictable winds. Massive branches scraped across the hull as Ryan plunged through the forest canopy. The impact came suddenly, bone-jarring and violent. The pod slammed into the ground, bounced once, twice, then finally settled with a metallic groan. For a long moment, Ryan didn't move. He listened. No breach alarms. No depressurization. No internal fires. Still alive, he muttered. Good start. He unstrapped himself, checked his gear, and triggered the hatch release. The door hissed open. Warm, humid air poured inside, thick with the smell of rotting vegetation and something animal, musky, heavy, alive. Ryan stepped out on the ground covered in spongy, purple moss that squelched under his boots. The forest swallowed him instantly. Trees towered overhead like living skyscrapers, their trunks wider than buildings back home. The canopy blocked most of the light, leaving the world beneath locked in permanent twilight. Somewhere in the distance, something howled, a long, echoing sound that sent vibrations through the ground. Ryan paused, letting his lungs adjust. The air burned slightly, like breathing a high altitude mixed with heavy pollen. Uncomfortable, but not unbearable. So this is the death world, he said quietly. He checked his compass, oriented himself toward the coordinates of the abandoned research station, and started walking. Every step felt deliberate. This wasn't a place you rushed through. The first thing Ryan noticed was how wrong the briefings had been. The toxic spores drifting through the air made his eyes water and his nose itch. Nothing more. Like late summer allergies back home. Annoying but manageable. The acid rain stung when it touched exposed skin, similar to salt water in a fresh cut. Definitely not pleasant, but not lethal. What was dangerous was the silence between sounds. The forest never stayed quiet for long. Insects chirped in strange rhythms. Birds with translucent wings darted between branches. Something large moved just out of sight more than once. Heavy footsteps muffled by the moss. Ryan followed the same survival rules his father had drilled into him as a kid. Move slowly. Make noise when it matters. Never act like prey. After several hours of careful travel, he found a small clearing near a stream. The water shimmered faintly, carrying a sharp chemical smell, but it flowed steadily and looked clear beneath the surface. This'll do, Ryan decided. He set up camp with practiced efficiency. Fire pit first, dug deep, lined with stones. Shelter second, tarp secured against the trunk of a massive tree, angled to block wind and rain. Gear hung from branches to keep it dry and off the ground. Comfort wasn't luxury. Comfort was survival. As dusk settled in, the forest changed. Shadows grew longer. Sounds deepened. The air vibrated with movement. Ryan lit his fire, letting the flames burn bright enough to be seen, but controlled enough not to attract unnecessary attention. He boiled water from the stream, filtering it twice before letting it cool. The first sip tasted metallic and sharp. His stomach didn't protest. Good enough, he said. Dinner was simple. One of his indestructible protein bars warmed over the fire. It wasn't gourmet, but hot food mattered more than flavor. That's when he heard the breathing. Low, slow, close. Ryan didn't jump. He didn't spin around wildly or reach for his weapon. He stood up, slowly, and turned toward the darkness just beyond the firelight. I can't hear you, he said calmly. This is my camp. The breathing stopped. Branches cracked. Something enormous shifted its weight. Ryan's heart rate increased, but his hand stayed steady. He lowered his rifle slightly, not pointing it away, but not aiming either. I'm not here to hunt, he continued, and I'm not prey. The creature stepped forward. Firelight revealed midnight blue, for stretched over massive muscle. Too many limbs, too many teeth, eyes that reflected green, like polished glass. An apex predator. Exactly the kind the briefings warned about. It growled. A deep, chest-rattling sound meant to test him. Ryan didn't back away. Instead, he reached slowly into his pack. He pulled out the remaining half of his protein bar. I know this is weird, he said softly, but I'm not competing with you. He tossed the food gently, letting it land halfway between them. The predator froze. Its head snapped down, nostrils flaring as it sniffed the air. It looked from the food back to Ryan, confused, cautious, curious. Ryan sat down, made himself smaller, less threatening. That's yours, he said. No tricks. The creature crept forward, sniffed once more, then devoured the bar in a single bite. Silence stretched. Then, slowly, impossibly, the predator sat back on its haunches, still watching, but no longer aggressive. Ryan exhaled. Well, he said quietly, guess I won't be eating alone tonight. From somewhere far above, Vorti's seven's moons began to rise, and for the first time since landing, the deadliest planet in the sector didn't feel quite so hostile. The predator didn't leave. That was the first thing Ryan noticed as the fire burned low and night fully claimed the forest. It stayed just beyond the circle of light, massive shape half hidden in shadow, eyes glowing faintly like distant stars. Not pacing, not stalking, just watching. Ryan didn't try to scare it off. Predators respected confidence, not noise. He added a log to the fire, slow and deliberate, keeping his movements predictable. Sparks rose into the air and vanished beneath the towering canopy. The creature flinched once at the crackle, then settled again. All right, Ryan murmured. You can stay. Just don't make it weird. The forest answered with sound. Something screamed far to the east, high-pitched and short-lived. Another call echoed in response, deeper, more territorial. Ryan recognized the pattern instantly. Hunters communicating. He tightened his shelter lines and checked the perimeter, careful not to turn his back on the creature. If it wanted him dead, he'd already be dead. That fact alone meant everything. He banked the fire for the night and slid into his sleeping bag, boots still on, rifle within reach. Sleep came lightly, too lightly. Every snap of a branch dragged him half awake. Every unfamiliar call made his muscles tense. His body remembered nights like this. Storms back on the colony world. Wolf howling beyond the fence line. The knowledge that safety was something you built, not something you were given. At some point before dawn, rain started falling. Not heavy, not violent. Just enough to soak the ground and thicken the air. Ryan woke to movement. The predator had shifted closer during the night. Much closer. It now lay barely 20 feet from the fire pit, curled partially around itself, massive chest rising and falling in a slow, steady rhythm. Its fur rippled slightly with each breath. It was asleep. Ryan didn't move. Predators slept lightly, but waking one abruptly was a terrible idea. Instead, he lay still, listening, memorizing the sound of something that could tear him apart, choosing not to. Morning came gradually. The forest lightened from black to deep blue to muted purple. Strange birds called from above, their wings catching the light like stained glass. Mist rolled low across the moss-covered ground. The predator opened one eye. Green light met Ryan's gaze. They stared at each other for a long moment. Ryan raised one hand slowly. Not a wave, not a threat. Just acknowledgement. Morning, he said softly. The creature huffed, then stretched, muscles rolling beneath its fur. It stood, impossibly quiet for its size, and shook itself. Water sprayed everywhere. Ryan laughed despite himself. Yeah, I feel the same way. He got up and began his morning routine as if this were the most normal thing in the world. Boil water, check gear, eat breakfast. The predator watched it all with intense focus, head tilting slightly as Ryan moved. When he poured water into his canteen, it sniffed the air. When he packed his bag, it stepped closer. Ryan tore off a small piece of another protein bar and tossed it gently. The predator caught it midair, chewed, swallowed. Then it sat down again. Well, Ryan said, guess that makes us neighbors. He slung his pack over his shoulder and started toward the stream to refill his water. The predator followed, not directly behind him, off to the side, keeping distance, matching his pace. Always aware, always watching. Ryan didn't comment on it. You didn't comment on trust while it was forming. As the day passed, a strange rhythm emerged. Ryan moved carefully through the forest, mapping landmarks, marking safe paths, testing water sources. The predator shadowed him silently, occasionally vanishing into the undergrowth only to reappear minutes later. When something else moved nearby, something smaller but aggressive, the predator rumbled low in his chest. Ryan learned quickly what that sound meant. Danger. Not for him, for whatever was coming too close. By midday, Ryan reached a ridge overlooking a wide valley. From there, he could see miles of forest and a river cutting through it like a blade of light. He stopped to rest, sitting on a flat stone. The predator sat nearby, not guarding him, not threatening him, just present. Ryan pulled out his data pad and recorded notes. Local apex predator exhibits territorial but non-aggressive behavior when approached without fear response. Food sharing appears to establish neutral to positive interaction. The predator flicked an ear. Yeah, I'm talking about you, Ryan said, smiling. He reached out slowly, very slowly, and stopped short, letting the creature decide. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the predator leaned forward. Ryan's fingers brushed dense fur, warm, coarse, alive. The creature didn't flinch. Okay, Ryan breathed. That's new. He pulled his hand back, heart pounding, not from fear, but from the realization of what this meant. Back at the academy, entire teams had died because they never stopped acting like intruders. He wasn't an intruder. He was adapting. As evening fell, Ryan returned to the same clearing. He rebuilt the fire and prepared a simple meal using fish he'd caught from the stream with his folding rod. The smell carried. The predator's attention sharpened instantly. Ryan cooked one fish thoroughly, letting it cool before sliding across a flat stone toward the creature. It swallowed the fish whole. Then it made a sound Ryan hadn't expected. Low, soft, almost pleased. Ryan grinned. Cooked food's better, he said. Trust me. The predator lay down again near the fire. Ryan leaned back against a tree, staring up at alien stars barely visible through the canopy. You know, he said quietly, I think I'll call you Bruno. The creature didn't object. That night, Ryan slept deeper than he had since landing, because for the first time on board E7, he wasn't alone. By the third morning, the forest had accepted them as a single presence. Ryan noticed at first in the silence, not the dangerous kind, but the calm kind. Smaller creatures no longer scattered in panic when he walked by. Birds didn't scream warnings. The undergrowth stayed mostly still. They knew where Bruno moved, others gave space. Ryan packed camp with the same unhurried confidence he developed back home. He didn't rush. Rushing meant mistakes, and mistakes on Vorti's 7 meant dying alone. Bruno watched him closely, massive head following every movement. When Ryan slung his pack over his shoulder, Bruno rose as well, stretching until his joints cracked softly. All right, Ryan said. Let's go. They moved together through the forest. Sometimes Bruno walked behind him, sometimes ahead. Sometimes he disappeared entirely, reappearing minutes later from a different direction. Ryan quickly realized Bruno wasn't wandering. He was scouting. When Bruno growled low, Ryan stopped. When Bruno's ears flattened, Ryan adjusted his path. When Bruno froze, Ryan froze. It wasn't obedience. It was cooperation. By midday, Ryan had covered more ground than he'd planned. The research station was still a day away, but the terrain here was rich. Streams, shelter options, abundant life. This planet didn't want to kill him. It wanted to test him. Ryan paused near a shallow river bend, kneeling to refill his canteens. Bruno stood watch, eyes scanning the tree-line. You're good at this, Ryan said absently. Better than half the security teams I trained with. Bruno flicked his tail. Something moved. Fast. Too fast. Ryan felt it before he saw it. Air displacement. The subtle rawness of the forest shifting. Bruno exploded into motion. The growl that tore from his chest wasn't a warning. It was a declaration. A smaller predator burst from the brush, lean, sharp, desperate. It lunged toward Ryan, jaws snapping. it never reached him. Bruno hit it midair. The impact shook the ground. The fight was over in seconds. The smaller predator fled, bloody but alive, vanishing into the forest with a high, panicked shriek. Bruno stood between Ryan and the direction it had come from, for bristling, chest heaving. Ryan didn't move, didn't cheer, didn't panic. He waited until Bruno's posture relaxed, then slowly stood. "Thanks," he said quietly. Bruno turned his head slightly, as if acknowledging the sound rather than the words. That night, Ryan decided to send a transmission, not a distress call, a status update. He set up his portable comm unit near the fire, adjusting the angle until both he and Bruno were visible. Bruno lay beside the flames, grooming his fur like a massive, murderous house cat. Ryan hit record. "Command, this is Cadet Ryan Cole. I'm alive." The words alone would have caused chaos. "I've encountered local wildlife and established a stable camp. Progress toward the research station is steady, but terrain requires cautious movement." He gestured casually toward Bruno. "This is Bruno. Species classification lists him as an apex predator, approximately 800 pounds. Territorial but intelligent." Bruno yawned, exposing teeth that could shear armor. Ryan continued calmly. "I've been documenting behavioral patterns and environmental survivability. The planet is challenging but manageable with adaptation rather than resistance." He ended the transmission and cued it for delayed relay. By the time it reached the academy, everything would change. They didn't know that yet. Back on Vorty 7, Ryan and Bruno shared another meal. Ryan cooked fish. Bruno supervised. As the fire burned low, Ryan leaned back and stared into the flames. "You know," he said, "people back home would say you're impossible." Bruno snorted softly. "Yeah, they say that about a lot of things." The next few days blurred into rhythm. Move, explore, rest, learn. Bruno followed Ryan openly now, no longer hiding his presence. Other predators avoided them completely. Herbivores watched from a distance, alert but calm. Ryan learned Bruno's signals. A stiff tail meant danger ahead. A soft huff meant curiosity. A low rumble meant something else is watching you. Bruno learned Ryan's. When Ryan stopped suddenly, it meant observe. When Ryan crouched, it meant caution. When Ryan relaxed, it meant safe. They were becoming something more than companions. They were becoming a unit. On the 5th day, Ryan reached a high ridge overlooking the valley where the research station waited beyond the horizon. He stopped and took in the view. Purple forest, silver rivers, storm clouds crawling slowly across the sky. "This place isn't dead," Ryan said softly. "It's just honest." Bruno sat beside him, massive silhouette against the alien sky. Behind them, kilometers away, Commander Hayes sat at his desk. The transmission from Vorty 7 had just arrived. On the screen, a human sat beside a campfire. Next to him lay an apex predator. Relaxed, trusting, alive. Hayes stared at the pause frame, his hand slowly lowering the casualty report he'd already signed. "That's impossible," someone whispered. Hayes didn't answer. He just watched the human scratch the predator behind the ears and realized the galaxy had made a terrible mistake. The research station appeared through the trees like a corpse that refused to lie down. Metal walls jutted at crooked angles, half consumed by purple vines and alien moss. One of the blast doors hung completely off its track, torn open as if something had clawed its way out rather than in. Black scorch marks stained the outer hull. Bruno stopped at the edge of the clearing. He didn't growl. He didn't advance. He simply refused to move. Ryan felt it immediately, a heaviness in the air, a sour scent that had nothing to do with decay and everything to do with fear. "You don't like this place," Ryan said quietly. Bruno's ears flattened. His fur rippled along his spine. Ryan adjusted his pack and checked his rifle. "All right, I'll take it slow." He stepped into the clearing alone. The station's interior was silent in a way the forest never was. No insects, no distant calls, no life. Ryan activated his flashlight. The beam cut through dust and darkness, illuminating overturned tables, shattered equipment, and deep gouges torn into reinforced metal walls. Whatever had happened here hadn't been quick. In the main lab, specimen containers lay broken, their contents long dried into unrecognizable stains. Data pads were scattered across the floor, some cracked, some still faintly glowing with residual power. Ryan picked one up. The last log auto-opened. Day 47. Supply ship delayed again. Council assures us conditions will improve. Day 53. Atmospheric spores causing severe reactions in non-human team members. Medical supplies low. Day 61. Water filtration failing. Local water too acidic for our biology. Day 68. No response from Council in 6 days. I believe we've been abandoned. Ryan swallowed. They hadn't been killed by the planet. They'd been killed by waiting. He moved deeper into the station. Sleeping quarters held untouched environmental suits. Top-tier technology designed to protect against hostile worlds. Their batteries were dead. Their seals cracked. Technology only worked as long as it was fed. The mess hall still held ration containers, empty and stacked neatly, as if the occupants had tried to maintain order right up until the end. Ryan imagined them sitting here, counting calories, watching the walls close in. In the control room, emergency lighting still flickered. The geothermal power tap hummed quietly beneath the floor, still functional after all this time. The station hadn't failed. The people had. Ryan sat in one of the chairs and exhaled slowly. They tried to make the planet adapt to them, he said aloud, instead of adapting to it. Outside, Bruno let out a low, uneasy sound. Ryan retrieved the mission objective quickly. The data cores had exactly where the briefing said they would, sealed, intact, untouched. He transferred the contents to his portable drive, then backed them up twice. Mission accomplished. But he didn't leave. He walked through the station again, this time not as a visitor, but as someone assessing potential. The structure was sound. The power was stable. The location was defensible. This wasn't just a tomb. It was shelter. As the sun dipped low, Ryan stepped back outside. Bruno still waited at the tree lean, tense and alert. I know, Ryan said, walking over. This place smells wrong to you. Bruno sniffed him, checking for injury, then leaned heavily against his side. They died here, Ryan continued softly. But that doesn't mean it has to stay a grave. He sat beside Bruno, shoulder against fur. The power works. There's shelter, water nearby, food. We could make this work. Bruno looked toward the station, then back at Ryan, uncertain. We don't have to stay if you hate it, Ryan said. We're a team. For a long moment, Bruno didn't move. Then, slowly, he stood and took a cautious step toward the clearing. Ryan smiled faintly. Together, he said. They crossed the clearing side by side. Inside, Bruno moved carefully, sniffing every room, every corridor. When they reached the control room, he settled near the entrance, positioning himself between Ryan and the outside, guarding, claiming. That night, Ryan slept inside the station for the first time, not in a sealed suit, not behind reinforced barriers, just a sleeping bag on the floor, doors open to let fresh air flow. Bruno lay between him and the entrance, massive chest rising and falling. Ryan recorded another transmission before sleeping. Command, I recovered the data cores. Mission objective complete. He hesitated, then added, the research station is mostly intact. Power systems still functional. I'm going to establish a temporary base here to finish my environmental documentation. He didn't mention the bodies. He didn't need to. As the transmission sent, something shifted beyond the stars. Back in civilized space, scientists would soon see a human living comfortably where entire teams had failed. They would ask how. They would argue why. And they would realize something unsettling. The planet hadn't been the enemy. It had simply been selective. The transmission hit the Academy like a shockwave. At first, no one believed it. A single human cadet, classified as an expected casualty, had not only survived 47, but had completed the mission and established a functioning base inside a station where an entire research team had died. Then they played the footage. In the communications hall, officers and analysts crowded around a single screen. The video showed Ryan sitting comfortably inside the research station, explaining water filtration methods like he was teaching a casual class. Behind him, partially visible in the open doorway, lay Bruno, relaxed, alert, very much alive. Someone dropped a datapad. "That's an Urcenthrax," a xenobiologist whispered. "They're hyperterritorial apex predators." On screen, Ryan casually reached out and scratched behind Bruno's ear. The room went silent. Commander Hayes watched without blinking. He replayed the clip twice, then a third time. "He didn't tame it," Hayes said slowly. "He adapted to it. Within hours." The footage spread beyond military channels. The Xenobiology Department requested access. Environmental Sciences demanded Ryan's raw data. Strategic Command flagged the planet for immediate reassessment. Someone, no one ever admitted who, leaked the video. By the end of the week, it was everywhere. Across trading stations and research hubs, beings of hundreds of species watched the same impossible sight. A human living peacefully on a world officially classified as unsurvivable. Ryan's second public transmission made things worse. Or better, depending on who you asked. "Hey, everyone," Ryan said into the camera, standing ankle-deep in a river that had dissolved armies of carrion scouts in under a minute. "Quick update on water safety." He lifted his pant leg, showing slightly reddened skin. "Stings a bit, but nothing serious. Filter twice, avoid algae blooms, and you're good." Behind him, Bruno splashed through the water, snapping playfully at fish. Viewers across the galaxy stared in disbelief. The reports came in fast. Human biology tolerated acidity better than most spacefaring species. Human lungs adapted to variable atmospheres. Human psychology responded to danger with curiosity instead of panic. But it wasn't just biology. It was attitude. While others arrived on death worlds armored and sealed, humans arrived prepared to learn. In a council chamber light years away, Ambassador Krell watched Ryan's footage play on repeat. "A fully equipped research team died here," Krell said quietly, "and this human treats it like a field trip." A Vraxian delegate leaned forward. "If humans can survive death worlds, then hundreds of unclaimed planets are suddenly viable." That was the moment fear entered the conversation. Unclaimed worlds meant neutral space. Neutral space meant balance. Humans threatened that balance without firing a single weapon. Some delegates proposed restrictions. Others proposed partnerships. A few proposed surveillance. Earth's diplomats were suddenly invited into meetings they'd never been allowed near before. Meanwhile, Ryan had no idea. Back on 47, he was busy cleaning the research station. He repaired vents, cleared debris, salvaged functional equipment. The geothermal power system hummed steadily, feeding energy into lights and systems that hadn't been active in years. "This place can work," he said aloud, adjusting a control panel. Bruno supervised from a corner, occasionally knocking over tools with his tail. Ryan laughed. Yeah, you're very helpful." He set up a more permanent camp inside the station. Actual beds, a cooking area, organized storage. He even restarted the hydroponics bay, planting her vegetables from emergency seed packs. Tomatoes sprouted within days. "See," Ryan said proudly. "Even death worlds like fresh food." He recorded another transmission. "I found the previous team's logs," he said, voice quieter this time. "They didn't fail because the planet killed them. They failed because they never stopped waiting to be rescued." He paused. "They deserve better." That message hit hard. Families of the lost research team sent messages of thanks. Scientists reanalyzed decades of data. Military analysts quietly rewrote survival doctrine. The phrase death world began to feel inaccurate. Back in the academy, Commander Hayes received new orders. Ryan Cole was no longer expendable. He was now classified as strategically valuable. High Command wanted reports. Detailed ones. Environmental data, survival methods, predator behavior, everything. Hayes sent a request. Ryan's reply came 2 days later. "Hey, Commander." "Sure, I'll send everything." "No problem." The video attached showed Ryan teaching Bruno to retrieve dropped fishing line from a riverbank. The massive predator performed the task with surprising gentleness, returning the line without tangling it. "I think he likes helping," Ryan added casually. Hayes stared at the screen and shook his head. The galaxy wasn't ready for this. On dozens of worlds, young humans watched the videos and felt something ignite. Hope, curiosity, belonging. They saw a place where humanity didn't need permission to exist. A place where adaptation mattered more than dominance. Back on 47, night fell again. Ryan sat outside the station, staring at the alien sky. 3 moons rose slowly above the treeline, bathing the world in pale light. Bruno lay beside him, massive presence warm and steady. You know, Ryan said quietly, I think this place might be home. Bruno responded with a low, content rumble. And far away, across the galaxy, civilizations began to understand a truth they had overlooked for centuries. Humans didn't conquer hostile worlds. They belonged to them. 6 months after Ryan Cole landed on 47, the planet was officially reclassified, not as a death world, as a selective world. The distinction mattered more than anyone wanted to admit. Ryan learned about it the same way he learned about most galactic events, through a delayed transmission that arrived while he was eating breakfast. Real eggs this time, grown in the revived hydroponics bay. Bruno lay nearby, gnawing on a bone that used to belong to something foolish enough to challenge his territory. The message flickered to life on the main screen. Commander Hayes appeared, older somehow, but smiling. Lieutenant Cole, he began. Ryan blinked. Lieutenant? Promotion went through last month. You were busy. Ryan chuckled. Yeah, that tracks. Hayes' expression shifted, becoming more formal. You've exceeded every expectation. The data you've sent has changed survival doctrine, colonization theory, and frankly, politics. High Command has approved a full extraction offer. Ryan already knew where this was going. You can come home a hero, Hayes continued. Full honors. Any posting you want. Academy instructor. Strategic advisor. Whatever you choose. Bruno lifted his head at the change in Ryan's posture. Hayes sighed softly. But, he added, I also have authorization for something else. The screen changed, displaying official seals from multiple departments. Permission to establish 47 as a permanent human research colony, with you as primary administrator. Ryan didn't answer right away. He stood and walked to the window. Outside, the forest stretched endlessly, alive with color and sound. The river shimmered in the distance. The station behind him hummed with power. The air no longer felt hostile. It felt familiar. Bruno joined him, standing on his hind legs to peer out at the world they claimed together. What do you think? Ryan asked quietly. Bruno made a low sound that meant absolutely not leaving. Ryan smiled and turned back to camera. Commander, thank you. Really, but I'm not coming back. Hayes nodded, unsurprised. This place fits, Ryan continued. I've mapped over 300 square kilometers. Identified stable settlement zones. The southern continent is ideal. Less seismic activity, better water access, fewer aggressive predators. He paused. And the ecosystem works, as long as we respect it. Hayes exhaled slowly. Then the position is yours. After the transmission ended, things moved quickly. Supply drops arrived monthly. Specialists requested short-term research days. Earth's government quietly backed Ryan's proposals. The first visitors arrived cautiously. Scientists, engineers, survival experts. All of them reacted the same way when they met Bruno. Fear, then disbelief, then understanding. Ryan taught them what he'd learned. How to read the forest. How to treat predators as neighbors, not enemies. How to adapt instead of dominate. A year after Ryan's arrival, the first permanent settlers landed. 5 humans, chosen not for rank or wealth, but for adaptability. Ryan greeted them at the landing site with Bruno at his side. This is Bruno, Ryan said casually. He's local security. Be respectful. Bruno yawned, displaying teeth the size of knives. The settlers laughed nervously. Within months, the colony took shape. Gardens grew. Structures rose. Paths formed where there had once been wilderness. The local fauna adjusted. Predators learned boundaries. Herbivores grazed near human lights without fear. The planet didn't resist. It adapted back. Years passed. Vortice 7 became a case study taught across the galaxy. Human colonies formed on dozens of worlds once labeled impossible, not through force, through understanding. Commander Hayes retired and eventually joined the colony himself, sitting beside Ryan on the station's porch as 3 moons rose into the sky. "You changed everything," Hayes said one night. Ryan shook his head. "No, I just listened." In the forest, Bruno's roar echoed, answered by higher-pitched calls. Cubs. Life continuing. On the anniversary of his landing, Ryan recorded one last public message. "People keep asking how humans survive on death worlds," he said, panning the camera across the settlement. "The truth is simple." He gestured to the forest. "There are no death worlds, just worlds that demand respect." Bruno stepped into frame, massive and calm. "Adapt, learn, share space, and anywhere can be home." Ryan smiled. He'd volunteered for a mission no one expected him to survive. Instead, he found where humanity belonged. Not at the center of the galaxy, but wherever the galaxy thought life was impossible.